In a quiet suburb southwest of Houston, there is a man Forbes says is worth around $8 billion. He doesn't run an oil empire. He isn't on television. Most of his neighbors in Sugar Land, Texas, have no idea who he is. And the woman who built that fortune with him. She runs a $15 billion company, and she still drives herself to work and parks in the middle of the lot. But here's the thing. The frugality isn't the story. The story is how two immigrants bought a tiny struggling software shop for less than $1 million and turned it into the largest woman-owned business in America. This is Asian Dynasty, and this is the richest family in Sugar Land, Texas. Stay with me, because the higher we climb, the stranger it gets. From a $1 million gamble in 1989, all the way to one of the biggest individual bets in the entire history of Tesla. By the end, you'll see the exact pattern that made them rich, and why almost nobody ever noticed. To understand this family, you first have to understand that nothing about them looks like money. No flashy logo, no reality show, no private island, just two people who outworked everyone around them and then refused to spend like the billionaires they had become. So let's go back to the very beginning. Her name is Ty Lee. She was born in 1958 in Bangkok, Thailand, but she grew up in South Korea, in a country still rebuilding from a brutal war. Her father was an economist, and not an ordinary one. He was the first Korean person ever to graduate from Amherst College all the way back in 1950, after working as a translator for the U.S. Army. Then he came home to help design South Korea's recovery plan. So young Ty Lee grew up around a single, unshakable idea. Education is the one thing that lets you climb, no matter where you start. She moved to the United States as a teenager, just 15 years old, to attend high school. Then she got into Amherst College, in the very first class of women the school ever admitted. She earned a double degree in biology and economics in 1980. Then she did something almost no one like her had ever done. She went to Harvard Business School, and in 1985, she became the first Korean woman in history to earn an MBA from Harvard. Let that sink in for a second. The first. But she didn't go chasing a fortune right away. She took a job at Procter & Gamble in brand management. Then she moved to American Express in the corporate card division. She was studying, up close, how the biggest companies in the world actually run. And quietly, the whole time, she was saving. And then she met Leo Koguan. Leo was born in Indonesia in 1955 to Chinese parents. He had come to America too and put himself through Columbia University and then New York Law School. He was a trained lawyer. They married in 1989, and that very same year, they made the bet that built everything. Together, they bought a small, struggling software reseller called Software House for less than $1 million. A tiny company doing only about $1 million a year in sales. Most people would have looked at it and seen a nice little business. Nothing more. Ty Lee and Leo saw something completely different. They renamed it SHI International. Ty Lee became the president and chief executive. Leo became the chairman. And then they did the single hardest thing in all of business. They grew it slowly, carefully, without selling out, and without ever taking it public for more than 30 years straight. And understand just how rare that is. They took no outside investors, no venture capital riding in to inflate the numbers. In an industry full of giants, they fought for every single contract, reinvested almost every dollar back into the company, and answered to no one but themselves. Where other founders cashed out early and walked away rich, Ty Lee and Leo simply kept building. One customer at a time, 1 year at a time. It is the least glamorous way to get rich there is. And it is exactly why so few people have ever managed to copy it. Now here is what that patience actually built. Today, SHI International does around $15 billion in sales every single year. $15 billion. It serves more than 15,000 customers, including names like Boeing, AT&T, and Johnson Johnson. It employs thousands of people across 35 offices all over the world. It recently poured $20 million into a brand new AI lab, testing solutions for its clients on NVIDIA's technology. And it is, by Forbes' own count, the largest woman-owned business in the entire United States. The largest, built up from a $1 million shop by a woman who had to hear the word no 1,000 times. Ty Lee still personally owns about 60% of that company, and that single fact is what makes her today one of the richest self-made women in America. She's worth somewhere around $6 billion depending on the day the market closes. In 2025, Forbes ranked her the 5th richest self-made woman in the entire country, ahead of names you would instantly recognize. But here is something those net worth lists never bother to mention. Ty Lee gives enormous amounts of it away. After meeting a young girl who had been paralyzed by shrapnel during the war in Syria, she started the Ty Lee Foundation. It has since poured roughly $485 million into humanitarian work, building orphanages and libraries in Turkey, building schools and support centers in Syria, By its own count, it has already reached more than 3.5 million people. Amherst College named her its single most successful entrepreneur ever. She was named Entrepreneur of the Year. She sits on the board of one of the world's great cancer hospitals. And still, almost no one outside of business has ever heard her name. Now here is where the story gets strange, because if you walked into SHI's headquarters tomorrow morning, you would never, ever guess any of this. Ty Lee, a billionaire many times over, drives herself to work. She parks in the middle of the parking lot because there is no executive parking at SHI. She refused to build any. She works in a plain, modest office, sitting right next to junior staff. She has no personal assistant. She books her own travel. She manages her own calendar by herself. When Forbes first called her around 10 years ago to put her on the list of the richest self-made women in America, she did something almost unheard of. She asked her own team to try to get her name removed. She didn't want the attention. She said that a dollar amount could never come close to capturing the respect she had for the people who worked at SHI. She is also a devout Buddhist, and she says the very core of it, the belief that life is unavoidably about suffering, is what kept her grounded through all of it. Learning to adjust her expectations, she once explained, was a huge advantage in business. Think about that. A woman worth $6 billion is telling you that her secret weapon was learning to expect less. But remember, there were two people in this story. And while Ty Lee was quietly running the empire, her co-founder and former husband was about to do something that would stun even Wall Street, because Leo Koguan was about to make a second fortune. And he made it in a way that almost no billionaire on earth ever does. Leo and Ty Lee divorced back in 2002, but Leo held on to his stake in SHI, and he had something most people simply don't: conviction, and an appetite for risk that bordered on reckless. In 2019, Leo Koguan started buying Tesla stock, and not just a few shares. He poured almost everything he had into a single company. The people around him thought he had completely lost his mind. At one terrifying point, the stock nearly wiped him out entirely. He held on anyway. He didn't blink. Think about the kind of nerve that takes. This was a man who had already made one entire fortune, the safe way, over decades of patient work. He could have parked it, relaxed, and never worried about money again for the rest of his life. Instead, he put almost all of it back on the table on a single company, and then watched the screen turn red. Most billionaires spend their lives protecting what they already have. Leo Koguan risked nearly all of it, twice. And then Tesla exploded. By 2021, Leo Koguan had quietly become the third largest individual shareholder in all of Tesla on the entire planet, behind only Elon Musk and Larry Ellison. Bloomberg called him Tesla's hidden billionaire. One man, trading from behind a screen, had turned his bet into roughly $7 billion. At his absolute peak, his fortune was estimated as high as $13 billion. And where exactly does Forbes say this man lives? Not Silicon Valley, not Manhattan, Sugar Land, Texas. Quiet, ordinary suburb of Houston, the single richest man in the entire town, and the people on his street have no idea. Now, to be fair, Leo isn't frugal in the same way Ty Lee is. He did allow himself one extraordinary thing. In 2020, he bought the single most expensive penthouse in all of Singapore, the Wallish residence, sitting at the very top of Guoco Tower. He paid 62 million Singapore dollars for it, and he bought it from another billionaire, the British inventor James Dyson. But here is the part that tells you who Leo Koguan really is. Underneath the headlines, he has given away staggering sums of money, almost all of it to education. He donated $30 million to Shanghai Jiao Tong University, which then renamed its entire law school after him. 28 million more to Peking University, millions on top of that to Tsinghua and to Fudan. The lawyer who arrived in America with nothing started putting his own name on law schools across China, not on yachts, on universities. We are about halfway up this story now, and if you're enjoying it, do me a favor and tell me down in the comments which one surprised you more: the billionaire who parks in the middle of the lot, or the one who quietly bet his entire fortune on a single stock. Because the most important part is still coming. What these two people actually have in common. Think about what this family really is. Two immigrants, one from Indonesia, one from Thailand, by way of Korea. Neither one of them inherited a single dollar. They met, they married, and in 1989, they put almost everything they had into a $1 million software shop that nobody else even wanted. They divorced 13 years later, but by then, they had already built something that would far outlast the marriage. Company now worth tens of billions, and a combined family fortune that sits well above $14 billion. Ty Lee still runs it to this very day. Leo took his share and turned it into one of the most famous individual bets in the history of modern markets. And through every bit of it, the billions, the penthouse, the Tesla headlines, the center of gravity never moved. Work, patience, and a strange, almost stubborn refusal to ever act rich. So what is the pattern here? Why does the richest family in Sugarland choose to live like this? Look closely, and you can see it in both of them. Ty Lee measures herself by the thousands of people who work for her, not by the number sitting next to her name, the number she literally tried to delete. And Leo measures himself by law schools in China that will carry his name for the next 100 years, long after any stock price is forgotten. Neither of them ever treats the money itself as the prize. For her, it's a tool, a way to build a company that takes care of its people. For him, it's fuel, a way to put his name on something permanent. The frugality, the modest office, the middle-of-the-lot parking spot, none of that is some clever gimmick. It is simply what's left over when you genuinely, truly don't need the world to know that you're rich. And maybe that is the real lesson, hiding in plain sight in a quiet Houston suburb. We are all taught that wealth is supposed to look like something: the car, the watch, the address. But the richest family in Sugarland spent more than 30 years proving the exact opposite. The car is ordinary. The parking spot is in the middle. The office sits right next to the interns. Because real wealth, the kind that actually lasts for generations, was never about the spending at all. It was about building something so valuable that you no longer have anything left to prove. Ty Lee and Leo Koguan did not get rich and then decide to act humble. They were humble first, and that, more than anything else, is exactly how they got rich. If this story surprised you, then you need to see the last one we made. Another dynasty that hid an entire fortune in plain sight. It's on your screen right now. I'm Asian Dynasty, and the quietest house on the street is almost always the one worth watching.